Welcome back to another review, MESBG Fanatics, and as you can tell, this one is going to be a pretty cool one in regards to the fact that we are looking at some of the profiles that are iconic to the game. Now, we all know that there are 9 named Ringwraiths, mostly from the game, including them artificially, but we're actually going to be covering 10 profiles today because I'm going to go ahead and do the budget Ringwraith as we all have definitely named it when it comes to using just a single Ringwraith and kitting it out with Might, Will, and Fate to fit whatever budget, so to speak, that we want for our army. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive right into this, and I'm going to begin with the Witch King and go into the budget Ringwraith next because their profiles are right next to each other in the book, and then we'll go from there into the named ones. So the Witch King Angmar, he's fight 5, strength 4, defense 8, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 6. And then his Might, Will, and Fate, as many of us know already, depend on how much you want to pay. So we'll get to that. We'll just go ahead and talk about that first. So that's one of his special rules. And it says, when buying the Witch King for your force, decide how many points of Might, Will, Fate to give him, up to the maximum shown in his profile. So he can have a maximum of 3 Might and 3 Fate, and a maximum of 20 Will. So he comes with 10 automatically. At his weakest, the Witch King starts the game with no Might, no Fate, and 10 points of Will for his base cost. Each extra point of Might, Will, and Fate increases his cost by 5 points to the point where he can be upgraded to 3 Might, 3 Fate, and 20 Will, which puts him at his max cost as it shows without any other upgrades. So when you're looking at the book and you see that those 2 different point levels, the second one is when he's fully kitted with all of his Might, Will, and Fate. That's not including any other upgrades. So let's go ahead and look at what else he has. So he has heavy armor and a sword. His heroic actions are resolve, channeling, which is to be expected for a caster to have channeling. Strike, which is good because there are only a couple named Ringwraiths that have strike. Strength, and challenge. And I'm pretty sure he's the only Ringwraith to have challenge, but that's not surprising. So we'll tell as we go along whether or not other Ringwraiths have challenge. He can also be given the option to take an armored fell beast, a regular fell beast, the crown of Morgul, an armored horse, regular horse, Morgul blade, or two-handed flail. So it has a note here about fell beasts. They're a profile that I'm not going to talk about right now, but suffice it to say, a regular fell beast has a defense of 6, and an armored fell beast has a defense of 7. So they're a lot more expensive for that cost. You don't really see a lot of armored fell beasts. They are definitely not one that's commonly taken. Next up is the Crown of Morgul. And the Crown of Morgul is, when he's Witch King has it, his attacks increase to 3. Additionally, he can re-roll 1 dice when casting and resisting spells. So that's really good. You usually see the Witch King with the Crown of Morgul, and it's actually become a lot more commonplace now to just see him put on a horse or an armored horse and not taken with a fell beast because of the fact that giving the Crown of Morgul is much cheaper. It's half the points of a fell beast, and you can go ahead and get that extra attack in still with a horse or an armored horse on the charge. Still have good movement and mobility for kiting when it comes to casting, which is something that you can do with all Ringwraiths. So I'm just going to say that now as a blanket cost. I'm not going to go into, you can also do this with every single one of them. It's very common to see your Ringwraiths either on fell beasts or an armored or unarmored horse, because of the fact that the kiting ability to run up, 5, 6, 7 inches, chuck a spell, and then duck back behind the line is really good. And that's actually something that's very common with the budget Ringwraiths that we'll cover next. But you definitely see the Crown of Morgul, not only for the fact that he gets up to 3 attacks, but that ability to recast and re-roll a die when casting and resisting. Not so much the resisting, because unless you're going to do a straight up spell war, which is not something that you really see a lot of between casters due to the fact that they're just going to burn all their will in the first turn or two defending against each other's spells, and then whoever has priority usually will have a freebie to throw if it's like a wizard. But still, being able to have a free reroll to defend resisting is great, but the casting is even better because he's not a bad caster. He's definitely the best casting Ringwraith, but he could definitely benefit from having that free reroll when casting, and he really does benefit from it. Because let's just say you're going to throw something and say, all right, so one of his spells is your staff is broken on a 4-up. So you throw 2 dice at it. So you roll a 4 and a 3. Okay, well, you've already got it off on the 4. So let's go ahead and re-roll the 3 and see if we can't get a 6. Because that would just make it even harder to resist. And that's where the Crown of Morgul really pays for itself. There's actually a little bit of an argument on whether or not it is broken. Well, not broken, but underpointed because of that. Just the ability to bump him up by to 3 attack, that almost makes up the entire cost of the Crown of Morgul, and now he's getting a free recast every turn on top of that. If you do it for 2 turns, you've already made more than the cost of the Crown of Morgul. So definitely a piece of war gear that you see taken with the Witch King almost 100% of the time. Now, unfortunately, this next piece of war gear that he has, the Morgul Blade, is not one you see. And that is, once per game, the model's controlling player may declare that they are using their Morgul Blade during the fight phase before rolling to wound. If a model is using a Morgul Blade, they must direct all of their strikes against a single target. An enemy that suffers a wound from the Morgul Blade is automatically slain, regardless of the number of wounds on their profile. Heroes may use fate to avoid the wounds, but if even a single wound is not saved, they are slain. If the model using the Morgul Blade is mounted, they must use the rider's attacks and strengths if using the Morgul Blade. So, a little bit of an interesting fact there about that whole, like, if they're mounted. That's got to do with the Fell Beast, I believe, primarily because of the fact that the Fell Beast is strength 6 and has 2 attacks. So that's where having the Morgul Crown, again, is really useful because he does get that extra attack on the charge, which would give him 4 attacks, and those are his attacks. He'd be using those. And that's kind of why you would see him using an armored horse or a regular horse over the Fell Beast in this situation. Reading it sounds really good. But he is only strength 4, and even on a charge, if mounted, if you're going into an enemy hero, a lot of enemy heroes are still mounted these days. Yes, foot ones are still prevalent. There are plenty of Angbors out there, and what's their names? I'm drawing blanks, but like Kyrian or Syrian, whatever, Madril, those type of guys, Grimbold, if you want to look at Rohan. Lots of foot-only heroes still. But if you save one, I really see it being useful against like a multi-wound model that's not a hero. Or is a minor hero like those ones I just named, the Madrils and the Kyrians. But even then, most of the time, if you can charge against those and you're mounted, you're going to kill them anyway without needing to use the Morgul Blade. So you can just save yourself some extra points by not taking it. So it's not something that's really seen. I have seen it used before, yes. But usually it's one of those things where it's like, well, I had 10 points extra and there's no way I could shoehorn it in because either A, my warbands were maxed out, or B, I just didn't have another model to take or whatever. I've only ever seen it really at big point values too, like 900 or 1,000. So that's the Morgul Blade. Last things to cover real quick are special rules. He has Harbinger of Evil, Terror, and Will of Evil. And his magical powers include Drain Courage, Transfix, Compel, Instill Fear, Your Staff is Broken, Black Dart, and Sap Will. All right? So that's the Witch King. I already talked a whole lot, going on 10 minutes now. So let's do the Budgering Wraith real quick, and then we'll move on to the named one. So the Budgering Wraith is the same loadout when it comes to fight, strength, defense, attack, wounds, and courage. The difference for his Might, Will, and Fate is he is 070 base with a maximum of 214-2, and he has the same rules where you pay 5 points per point of Might, Will, and Fate that you are upgrading the Budgering Wraith to. The difference for heroic actions is they only have March and Channeling. So that is actually something the Witch King didn't have. He didn't have March, but they do have Channeling. So you see a lot of budget Ringwraiths taken with a couple points of might and just like 7 to 10 base will for, cheap heroes. I mean, they're heroes of fortitude. I'm sorry, the Witch King is a hero of valor if taken under the Barad-Dur army. And he's a hero of legend if taken in Angmar or Mordor. So, yeah, I forgot to cover that. My apologies. But yes, the budget Ringwraith, regular Ringwraith, unnamed, is a hero of fortitude. So, putting a couple points of might on them, they can be marching heroes. You can use them for marches and then have a cheap spellcaster to kind of mess up your opponent. Also has Harboring Evil, Terror, and Will of Evil. And then 1 of 9. There can only be a maximum of 9 Ringwraith models of any combination, including Ringwraith, Nazgul of Dol Guldur, or any named Ringwraiths in your force. So, got to keep that in mind as well. And then casting-wise, they know Transfix, Drain Courage, Compel, Black Dart, Instill Fear, and Sap Will. It's the same as the Witch King, but no staff is broken. And they cast pretty much the same thing as well. No, Black Dart's the same, and Still Fear's a little worse. So, moving on. So our first 2 named Wraiths are under the Angmar section of the book. And the first one is the Tainted, and he is the same. Fight, strength, defense, attack, wound, and courage. So fight 5, strength 4, defense 8, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 6 as a refresher. He has 2 might, 14 will, and 2 fate. So the difference between the budget Ringwraiths and the named Ringwraiths is the named Ringwraiths have a set amount of might, will, and fate, and they do vary from model to model. Same war gear with armor, heavy armor, and sword. Only knows heroic channeling. Options are Armored Fellbeast, Regular Fellbeast, Armored Horse, and Horse. And I'm sorry I didn't cover that with the budget Ringwraiths. They can take Armored Fellbeast, and Horse. No Armored Horse for the budget Ringwraiths. So yes, my apologies for that. Moving back to the Tainted, he has the same special rules for Harboring Evil, Terror, and Will of Evil. We're just going to go ahead and say that if those 3 are going to be on all of them. If for whatever reason that changes, I will let you know. But we're just going to say and make a caveat here that that's on all the named ones. So there are 2 special rules for the Tainted. He has, the first one is, I was about to say this right, and then I just had a brain fart. Alright, so we're going to try and get this right. It's a miasmatic presence. I think I said that right. Okay, so at the start of the move phase, before heroic actions are declared, the Tainted may elect to spend a point of will. If he does so until the end of the turn, all warrior models within 6 inches of Tainted may not benefit from a stand fast or take part in heroic actions. So he can spend a point of will and basically negate stand fasts and heroic actions, which means that's pretty big because you're paying might to get those heroic actions off. Now, yes, it says warrior models, so that affects both friendly and evil. I really see this being useful for if you have priority as the controller of the Tainted, because he's in Angmar and Mordor is what you can take the Tainted in. And both of those armies, neither one of them really cares about charging unless you're playing one that's like a really heavy for mounted. But even then, it's mostly Warg Riders. So you don't really care if your opponent charges you. You want to be able to, send your horde of orcs wherever you're going to send them to, overwhelm. whereas your opponent probably needs to try and get their models charged in strategic positions to best benefit them. So having lost priority, they would be trying to call heroic actions, which you could therefore negate their ability to move their support models, being the warrior, the units, with a heroic action. So very nice special rule there, but he does pay for it because you do have to spend a point of will. And then he has one other special rule, and that is Seeping Decay. And that is at the start of a fight phase, roll a d6 for each non-spirit model in base contact with the Tainted. If the model is a cavalry model, roll for both the mount and the rider. On a roll of a 6, they suffer a wound. So really hard for to kill this model, because if you charge in against him, there's a 16% chance at the beginning of the fight phase that you can die. I say die because I'm looking at one wound models. It just says suffer a wound. So heroes are less likely to have to worry about outright dying unless it's late game and they're out of out of fate and low on wounds. But still, even then, that's a cheeky way to potentially wound an enemy leader. Is they charge in against this guy and say, okay, well, I'll take that 16% chance, and then they take the wound, and then for whatever reason they fail, 2 or 3 fate points depending on what they have, because like some leaders like Théoden only have 2 fate points, so they fail both fate points, and boom, you take a wound. That kind of sucks. So a potential way there to get a cheeky leader wound, or just threaten to kill chaff. He also has the Drain Courage, Transfix, Compel, Black Dart, Instill Fear, and Sap Will spells. And so moving on, the next one up is the Dwimmerlack, and I'm just going to go ahead and cover it now. He has the same spell loadout as the Tainted. Also, same stats when it comes to fight value, strength, defense, attack, wound, and courage. Might 0, 16 will, and 2 fate. So he's definitely got more will to stay around. So for him, he has channeling again, and a little bit different, heavy armor and two-handed sword. So he's got a two-handed sword. I do believe that all models now come with hand weapons. So if potentially you don't want to go two-handed, you could go with a hand weapon. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check on that. But the fact that he has a two-handed sword is interesting. Same loadout for upgrade options. And then his special ability is Sap Fortitude. Each time a hero model within 6 inches of Dwimmerlack spends a point of Might, Will, or Fate, the Dwimmerlack may elect to spend a point of Will. If he does, roll a d6. On a 4-up, the enemy hero model must spend an additional point of the same type, or the deed will be cancelled, and any Might, Will, or Fate already committed will be lost. Note that a hero model that wishes to expend multiple points of Might, Will, or Fate may wait to see how the Dwimmerlack's roll affects their first point of Might, Will, or Fate before committing to spending any more. The Dwimmerlack will have to spend a point of Will for every point he wishes to affect, though he may wait to see how this first point of Will affected his opponent before deciding to spend another point of Will. Okay, so that's a lot of gobbledygook there, but basically he can spend his Will points to force you to spend 2 of your Might, Will, and Fate, potentially, because it's a 50-50. So, to be blunt, the Dwimmerlack got huge nerf. This used to be like a 12-foot bubble range or something. It was a ridiculous amount of range that it used to have on him. Under the old edition. I can't remember. It was like 12 or 24 inches. Ridiculous range. So it's definitely been nerfed. And the other thing for all these named Ringwraiths is they used to get all these bonuses for free. Now they have to pay a will point every time they want to use one. So I might be somewhat off on the whole how far it affected for that Might, Will, and Fate doubling, but I do know that the Dwimmerlack in particular, he used to be I wouldn't say a common. He was an uncommon sight. Not rare, but not common. But he was definitely one of those ones where you would see him in like flying circus armies or multiple Ringwraith armies. He was a good bet to be in those kind of armies. If it was just a one Wraith army, Nah, you didn't see him. But 3, maybe 4, it wasn't uncommon to see him there. Okay, moving on. So we are now going into the named wraiths in the Mordor section of the book. And the first one up is Kamul the Easterling. And he is same fight, strength, defense, attack, wound, and courage value. 2 might, 12 will, 2 fate. So he is the third named wraith, and he has the lowest amount of will. But he is meant to be more of a combat wraith. And that's seen in his actions. And okay, I was wrong. He has heroic challenge. So there is somebody other than the Witch King that has heroic challenge. He also has channeling and strike. Same upgrade options when it comes to Fell Beast, Armored Horse, etc. So his special ability is Essence Leech. If Kamul makes a strike against an enemy model which causes a wound, he instantly regains a single point of will spent earlier in the battle for each wound caused, unless the wound is saved by a point of fate or similar special rule. This cannot restore his will beyond 12. So that's a nice little special rule there, because every time he deals a wound, he gets a point of will back, and with the Will of Evil, every time he goes into combat, he loses a will. So if he can go into combat and kill a single troop every turn, he can keep his will pool even just from that. Even better if he can go against multiple models and kill them per turn, because then it gives him a chance to get back some will if he spends them for other things, like the second part of this rule. So additionally, this is still with Essence Leech, additionally, Kamul may spend a single point of will at the start of the fight phase before heroic actions are declared to increase either his fight value, strength, or attacks by 1 for the remainder of that fight phase. Note that if he is mounted, Kamul will only ever increase his own fight, strength, or attacks, not those possessed by his mount. So you can see kind of why he is that he's considered to be one of the combat race, because he has strike. He can spend a point of will to go up to fight value 6, and if you put him on a Fell Beast and he charges, he can have 3 attack. Or if you just want to use him to go and kill chaff, he can go and take out elite units that are fight 4. I know fight 4 is still the meta, but there are a lot of fight 3 and fight 2 armies out there still. But he can go in there and you can give him an extra attack. Say if you put him on horse mounted, well, he charges in, he's got 2, then you spend the point of will, now he's got 3. All right, so now if he's knocking prone an elite fight 4 unit and he's fight 5, he rolls the 6 and wins. Now he's got a good chance of trying to kill him and make up the will point as well. So not a bad way to use Kamul. As far as his casting, he still has those same 6 spells as well. So moving on, we have the Dark Marshal next. He is fight 6. So this is where the Dark Marshal is kind of considered to be like one of those other race that you take for fighting in combat. He does not have heroic strike, so fight 6 is as high as he can be. But that could force a lot of enemies to have to burn might points to strike up higher than him. Especially if you can get him on an on a Fell Beast or an armored horse or just a regular horse, and get those extra attacks on a charge. Something to definitely worry about. Still, he's not very commonly seen. He used to be more common, but not so much anymore. So same thing he only has a heroic channeling, like I said. Then his loadout for War Gear is heavy armor sword. Same 3 special rules. And then his personal special rule is rule through fear. At the start of the fight phase, before heroic actions are declared, the Dark Marshal may elect to spend a point of will. If he does this, all friendly warrior models within 6 inches of the Dark Marshal count as being in range of a banner until the end phase of the turn. Not bad. The ability to get a banner for a point of will, he does have 14 of them, so you have to be kind of judicious on how you want to do this. But you don't really see the Dark Marshal being, a leader. So if you're just strictly using him to try and go in and kill a couple troops per turn, maybe do a heroic combat off of 1 guy into 2, maybe kill 2, 3 troops, take down or come support your leader, which would be either like I don't know, potentially Sauron or Gothmog or I think Gothmog's a hero of legend. No, maybe not. I can't remember. No, he's a hero of valor. But you could have Gothmog being the leader. So that would be really good to have the Dark Marshal just kind of running around, going and trying to assassinate things. The ability to give the warrior models banner is great because, again, Mordor is usually about overloading your opponent with a horde mentality, unless you're going with a very elite loadout, which is something that can be done. I can talk about in the Mordor review. But more dice to try and win attacks. The more dice you can throw to win a fight, it's better chances to do a wound as well. So, not a bad special effect. Unfortunately, you don't really see the Dark Marshal much, as much as you used to. He is good though. You do see him sometimes taken as a strike force to go with the Morgul Knights. He can go with the Morgul Knights. See like a loadout of 5 or 6 Morgul Knights to go with the Dark Marshal, and that's kind of your heavy hammer strike force, because Morgul Knights, they're pretty good hitters. They are a heavy cav, and they cause terror too. A little caveat there. We're gonna go ahead and talk about that real quick. So you could see you do see the Dark Marshal with that as well. Not as much as he used to be. Unfortunately, Dark Marshal is not one that's most common anymore, sadly. However, he is more common than this next guy, and the next guy is the Shadow Lord. He is back to fight 5, strength 4, defense 8, 1 attack, 1 wound. He is courage 5. So the Shadow Lord is the only one, I believe, that is courage 5, not courage 6. 2 might, 14 will, 2 fate, so same as the Dark Marshal there. Heavy armor and a sword, heroic channeling. He cannot be put on an armored horse. He can only be put on a regular horse. So there's a little bit of difference to his war gear options as well. So 2 things changed right there. His bonus, his special rule is Pall of Darkness, or Pall of Darkness. P-A-L-L. Paul. I think it's Paul. Pal. It's not Pal. I think it's Paul. Anyway, at the start of the move phase, before heroic action is declared, the Shadow Lord may spend a will point to activate this ability. Until the end phase of that turn, shots against the Shadow Lord or any model within 6 inches of him will only ever hit on a 6. So he basically has an built-in blinding light for a point of will per turn. Not bad, because he's auto-casting it for 1 will. Where, a lot of folks with, like say, Gandalf the White, freebeing it, it's a 2-up on 1 dice. There's still that 16% chance you fail if you're using it, where he automatically gets it as long as he has to pay the point of will for it. So, trade-off, depending on how you look at it, not bad. Probably the quote-unquote weakest effect of the named Wraiths, due to the fact that it's really only good for shooting. But hey, you never know. Long deployment and movement games could be useful. And then, of course, he still has the same spells as all the others. And he actually shoots a little slanted when it comes to his spells. I'm looking at him in the Dark Marshal, where the Dark Marshal's a 4-up on Instill Fear. He's a 5. So definitely the weakest of the Wraiths that we've covered so far. Next up, we have the Undying, and he is fight 5, strength 4, defense 8, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 6, so he's back to that. 2 might, 18 will, 0 fate. Alright, so little thing there, but we'll see why in a minute. Heavy armor and a staff, so no sword for him, he has a staff, and that's kind of because he's kind of the quote-unquote caster of the group. I mean, he's not really the caster, but, just for shits and giggles, we'll say that. Heroic channeling, again, he cannot take an armored horse. So he has 2 special rules. This first one is Arcana Leech, or Arcana. I think it's Arcana. Arcana Leech. At the start of the move phase, before heroic actions are declared, the Undying may spend a will point to activate this ability. Until the end phase of that turn, the Undying regains 1 will point for each magical power successfully cast by another model within 6 inches. So, This used to be really, really good for the Undying under the old rules. Unfortunately, the new rules has really nerfed him. So before, it used to be any successful spell. So if he cast a spell, he got a will point back. And they didn't have to spend will points to activate these effects in the old edition. So he would just, spend 2 will the first turn on a spell. The next turn, spend 2 more will to cast a spell, be successful, and get 1 back. Unfortunately, because of the fact that they changed the rule for this and made it so that they have to spend a point of will, and that it's only for other models' successful casts, the Undying has kind of become a thing of the past. Which is okay, because he was extremely broken. I played against him in a couple games, and I don't ever think I saw him get below like 12 will. I think the lowest I got him was maybe 11. So I know I just said 12, but he then spent his will, or somebody cast a spell and he got it back. So he was definitely one that you saw in Flying Circus Armies, because they just kept him close, and he would never go away. And so the reason he's called the Undying is his second special ability, Eternal Willpower, is that he can use his will points as fate points. So already hard to wound these guys on defense 8, but then when you have 18 will points that can essentially become fate points, it's like, oh my gosh, just go away. So he's a pain in the ass, for lack of a better word. But again, because of the in this new edition, he has kind of become a thing of the past. So the next one up is the Knight of Umbar, and he is a same fight, strength, defense, attack, wounds, and courage. 2 might, 12 will, so another low will 1, and 2 fate. So the Knight of Umbar is considered to be the third or fourth, that's fourth combat hero when it comes to the casters, or the Ringwraiths. So the Witch King of Angmar is definitely the best. And then you have, I would say that the Dark Marshal is the least of them. He has fight 6, yes, but he can't strike. And then it's debated on whether Kamul or the Knight of Umbar is better. And so I'll talk about it and kind of give my thoughts, and then we can go. You can make your own decision. So I already talked about his stats. His war gear is armor. So he doesn't have heavy armor. I'm sorry, he does. It's armor of the Sundered Land and sword. So armor of the Sundered Land, it's a special armor. The Knight of Umbar only loses a point of will for being in a fight if he loses a fight during the fight phase. For example, if he doesn't win the duel roll to see which side may make strikes. So I don't know why they have to say that, but pretty good ability there. The one thing I will say is it's not heavy armor, which is what the rest of these guys have had. It just says armor. So in my personal opinion, I think he should be defense 7, not defense 8. Just my thoughts. That's just me. Because all these other guys have said heavy armor. I mean, heavy armor, heavy armor, heavy armor, heavy armor. It's all there. This one literally just says armor of the Sundered Land. And then when you talks about it, it doesn't say this is heavy armor with. Like, there's specific ones out there that say stuff like that. The one that comes to mind for me is I think it's Erkenbrand's horn, where it says this is a war horn or whatever it is, but it gives +2 courage. I think that's is that Erkenbrand? Yeah, it's Erkenbrand. So I mean, it specifically says that it's a horn. So I think that maybe it should say that it's heavy armor as well, and maybe it does. Maybe there's a errata out there that I haven't seen or don't remember. But anyway, moving on. So that's pretty good. If he wins a fight, then he's not giving in a will point to the will of evil, which is kind of why people lean towards him. That's the first reason why people lean towards him for being better. Because if he wins a fight, he's not losing a will point. Where Kamul, he loses one, but he can make it back if he wins and deals wounds. So again, no armored horse for him, just a regular horse, fell beast, and armored fell beast. And then his special ability is combat mimicry. At the start of any fight phase, before heroic actions are declared, the Knight of Umbar may spend a will point to activate this ability. The Knight of Umbar can elect to use the fight, strength, or attack values of his opponent instead of his own. He does not need to adopt all of these characteristics. He could, for example, only adopt the fight value. So it does say and or. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. Fight, strength, and or attack values. And so this is another reason why people are like, well, that's really good because he could go up against something like, say, the Balrog and take the Balrog's fight value and strengths and stuff and attacks and all that good jazz, you know. And it's like, yeah, that's great. So against something like the Balrog that isn't striking because it's fight 10, you know, that's perfect. But if you go against, say, like an Aragorn Elisar and do that, well, you have to do this before heroics are called. He doesn't have heroic strike. So if he takes, say, Aragorn Elisar's fight value of fight 6, well, Aragorn Elisar can just go ahead and pop his freebie or a point of might, and he's automatically got a higher fight value. So then it just becomes whoever rolls better, and if you get a 6, you know, and Aragorn has a built-in banner, Aragorn Elisar has built-in banner for himself, well, you know, great, you copied all my stuff, but I still won because I have a higher fight value now because I struck. I could see that being a way to potentially steal might points from your opponent, but I kind of feel like it's an expensive one. Personally, I think Kamul is the better option. I think it's better to just go ahead, pop a will point to make your fight value even, and then pop a might point to do a strike and leave it to chance to see who gets a higher fight value. That's just me. Some folks would say otherwise. But again, that's just my thoughts. So moving on, we are on the last one now, which is good because I'm getting tired. This is a longer video. Not as long as I expected it to be. I thought it would be closer to an hour. So the last one is the Betrayer. And he is fight 5, strength 4, defense 8, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 6. So the last time I'll say that. 2 might, 14 will, 2 fate. So he's got kind of that mid-range. That 14 will is kind of that sweet spot where most of these guys fall at. And that's because he's more of the caster sit-back type. So he has, again, heavy armor and a sword. And again, there's that heavy armor I was talking about. Channeling, and then just horse fell beast, armored fell beast. He has Bane of Kings, so that changes. So he still has the other 3 that I said that I'm not going to bring up every time. Here, I'll bring it up this time. Harboring of Evil, Harboring of Evil, Terror, and Will of Evil. But he also has Bane of Kings, and I can't remember exactly what Bane of Kings off the top of my head, but I think it has something to do with re-rolling all failed wounds against enemy heroes or leaders. Pretty powerful. But he's not really a combat hero, unfortunately. The thing that the Betrayer is really known for is his special rule of Master of Poisons. And that is, at the start of the move phase, before heroic actions are declared, the Betrayer may spend a will point to activate this ability. Until the end phase of the turn, friendly models with the Poison Weapon special rule within 6 inches of the Betrayer may re-roll all failed to wound rolls made with those weapons. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're going, okay, but this is Mordor. Well, he also can be taken in the Harad, the Serpent Horde army. And the Serpent Horde army is known for having a lot of poison weapons and stuff of that nature. So I believe it's their army bonuses. They can get 50% bows, and they all get Harad. They all get poison weapons added to, like, they get the poison weapon special to all their weapons. So I'm pretty sure like their bowmen and stuff pay for the bow with poison arrows. But then if you go with the army bonus, it's all the weapons. So that even includes like swords and lances and things of that nature. So it's crazy. But that's why it's really good for having the Betrayer, because 6-inch bubble, that means that they all re-roll failed wounds with poison weapons. So if you go pure, not only do you get to I can't remember, I think it's 1 is re-rolled. Yeah, so poison weapon is re-roll 1s to wound. And then poison arrows is reroll ones to wound when shooting. And then poison weapons will put that on everything, so you're rerolling ones on all poison weapons with the army bonus. And then popping this means if you have a poison weapon, which all weapons are now poison with their army bonus, you're re-rolling all failed wounds. So it's really, really, really potent and really a pain in the ass, just to put it that way. So he's very popular with Serpent Horde armies, especially ones that go with the Horde Serpent Horde, which is just a whole blob of foot guys. Yeah, it's a lot of shooting, a lot of poison, a lot of just annoyingness. But yes, those are the 10 profiles for the Ringwraiths. So this is one that somebody asked me to do a couple of years ago, and I wasn't really sure how to do it because the Ringwraiths are split up across 3 different armies in this book: Barad-Dur, Mordor, and Angmar. And then, of course, certain ones go to certain armies. Like I just said, the Betrayer can go to the Serpent Horde. Kamul the Easterling goes with Easterlings. And then the first 2 named ones outside of the Witch King, being the Dwimmerlack and the Tainted. The Dwimmerlack and the Tainted are in Angmar, as well as the Witch King of Angmar being potentially in Angmar as well. So I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to do all of them. So this is a longer review, akin to how my first ones were, but it covers everything you want to know there about those 10 different Wraith profiles. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like, share, subscribe, and I hope to see you guys playing some Ringwraith profiles in the future. Until then, until next time, take care.